Good morning, everybody. 2 seconds. Let's give it up for Juan on that last What makes that even more impressive is that at 8:42 this morning, after we had practiced all the songs before first service, I said, "Are you ready for that song?" He's like, "Yeah." He thought he was only playing the music. He hadn't even listened to the lyrics. So he learned it in literally 10 minutes. So, yeah. So, glad that you guys are here today. Before we really get going, I want to let you guys know about two things. All the church growth experts tell me never to tell people more than one thing that you actually want them to remember. But you guys look such like a sophisticated crowd. I think you can handle two. We're going to do it. We're going to go for it. Number one, around Christmas time, every year, the holiday season, really, we really like to love our world, love our community in a lot of practical ways. And so I want to tell you guys about a couple of ways coming up right now that you are going to have an opportunity to do just that here at Awaken. Number one, every year we participate in this thing called Operation Christmas Child, where we fill shoe boxes full of toys and school supplies and different things, and we send those off to kids around the world. And if you would like more information about how you could be a part of that, how you could do it, I want you immediately after our time together, not right now, but immediately after our time together, I want you to head straight back to the lobby directly behind you. There are boxes you can take. There's information about what you're supposed to put into the boxes. Apparently you're supposed to stick to the list, so make sure you stick to the list. And here's the only catch with this. You guys ready for it? You have to have the box back in next Sunday. So you have 7 days. Any procrastinators in the room? Now you put your hand up. Very good. You don't have time for that this week. This is a 1-week deal. 2-week deal. We told you last week too. But in case you missed it, it's a 1-week deal now. So if you want to be a part of this and you want to get a box out, make sure that you stop by today and you get to be a part of that. Second thing I want to tell you about loving our community is we participate every single year in this thing called the Schenectady City Hall a Day. And literally thousands of people gather in downtown Schenectady at the City Hall, and they put this festival together, Christmas-themed thing, and we get to stand out in front of the City Hall and hand out free hot chocolate and free cookies to everybody. I'm assuming that it's going to be on December 8th, from noon to 4. I'm assuming the weather's going to be about 72 degrees. So it's going to be a perfect day to stand outside for hours at a time and do this. But really, it is an incredible opportunity to love people, have conversations with people, get to know people, and just, it's amazing what a free cup of hot chocolate, a free cookie will do to someone's soul. And so we have an opportunity to love them. And you may say, well, listen, 12 to 4 seems like such a long time to stand outside in 72-degree weather. And if you're not so sure you can make it the whole time, that's okay, because you can sign up for 1-hour increments. You could go from 12 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, all the way up there. So you can sign up for 2 hours. Whatever you want to do, you can be a part of it. And if you're saying to yourself right now, man, that sounds great, but that day, December the 8th, that Saturday, is just not good for me. I just can't make it. Well, that's okay too. You know why? Because we need people to bake and bring in cookies that we're going to be able to give out. So I have taken away every excuse that you have to not be a part of the Schenectady City Holiday, and you are going to either be there or you're going to help in some way. If you would like more information about how you can do that, how you can be involved, or just sign up, make sure you stop by the guest services table on your way out today. There's a sign-up sheet. You can sign up on your way out. Everybody got it? Good. We are in a series today called 30-Minute Theology. 30-Minute Theology, where we are studying God. That's what theology means. It simply means to study God and to get to know Him better. And what's so cool is that people throughout history have experienced a relationship with God. They've heard God's voice in some cases, literally His voice, and they took that relationship and they wrote down what they learned, and they wrote down what they heard and what they experienced in that relationship, and they wrote it down, and then they passed those documents on for centuries and centuries, and then eventually people experienced a relationship with Jesus, who is the Son of God, and they took their experience and they wrote it down word for word, and they put it together, and eventually, several hundred years later, they put this thing together, all these documents spanning the course of hundreds of years. They put them together in what we call today the Bible. And these authors, they had an experience with God, the real God, And we want to learn from them what they experienced so that we can get to know God a little bit better, know more of his attributes, more of his character. Because listen, what you think about God and who you think he is extremely important. It's extremely important to your relationship. For example, if you view God as kind of like this big bully tyrant type person who's just waiting on you to mess up and he's going to flip you off a cliff. If that's your view of God, you think that would have a drastic impact on your relationship with God?
Yes.
Yes, it would. And there are so many people that view God that way and they don't quite understand how to view him. They don't understand his attributes. They don't understand his character, and it greatly affects their relationship with him. Or if you think of God as just only this soft, gentle, loving, pushover person, do you think that would have an impact on your relationship with him? Yes, it would. And so it's so valuable for us to be able to learn who he is, learn about him, get into his character. So that's what we're doing over these next couple weeks. We've already talked about the idea that God is love. Started off real easy. Then we said that God is a God of wrath. Took it to a whole other level. Today we're going to go somewhere kind of in the middle and talk about something that maybe we just don't understand as well, but is so important. To kick it off, how many of you in the room like music? Okay, a few of you. The rest of you, what's wrong with you? You get on board with that. But yeah, music, I really love music, and it's one of those things that, music can help us to be able to express things that words can't express. And Plato said it like this. He said, music gives wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and life to everything. Music sets forth what is important to us, what moves us, and it moves some of us in ways that should never be seen, certainly not in public, what changes us and what we long for. Now, what's so cool, though, is that the people of the Bible, the people who wrote the Bible, they loved music too. And they recorded a lot of songs. Well, actually, they recorded the lyrics. They didn't record the music for us. I'm not sure what they were thinking. But they recorded a lot of the lyrics down for us. And we've been able to pass those down. And a lot of the songs that we sing are actually written out of songs that were recorded in the Bible. The one that we just sang together, that Holy, 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 that was written in 1826, it comes out of a passage that we're going to read here in just a few minutes. But they recorded a lot of these songs. And the first recorded song in the Bible was found in Exodus chapter 15. Now, Moses, who was the leader of Israel, who had just led them out of captivity in Egypt, they were slaves, they were a slave nation for hundreds of years, and he brought them out of captivity, brought them across the Jordan, or not the Jordan, the Red Sea, and it was this huge miracle where Pharaoh and his soldiers were chasing them, and the Red Sea parted, and Moses and about 1 million people were able to cross over on dry ground. And then when Pharaoh and his soldiers tried, the water closed up and it drowned them. It was this crazy moment. And so what do you do if you're Moses and you're leading millions of people into a land that's unknown to you and you just saw all this happen? Well, you break out into song and dance, of course. It was like a mandatory nationwide song and dance thing. I'm so glad we don't have that today. And so what do you think that they would break into song about in that moment? Do you think maybe they would break into song about God's love? Do you think maybe that they would break into song about God's power? Let me give you a hint. The last song written in the Bible is the exact same kind of song. It's found in Revelation chapter 15. It is basically about the exact same thing. Let's read a little bit of each of them. We don't have time to read all of each of them, but let's kind of get the idea for a little bit of each of these. Exodus chapter 15, verse 1. It goes like this. Then Moses and the Israelites, those are our guys, they sang this song to the Lord. I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea. Just got a ring to it, right? Then it skips down to verse 11. We get to the heart of the song. Who among the gods is like you, Lord? Who is like you, majestic in what?
Holiness.
Holiness. Awesome in glory, working wonders. And then fast forward to Revelation chapter 15. Near the end of your Bible, it says this: they held harps given them by God. And they sang the song of God's servant Moses. There he is again. In the Lamb. Great and marvelous are your deeds, Lord God Almighty. Just and true are your ways, King of the nations. Who will not fear you, Lord, and bring glory to your name? For you alone are holy. All nations will come and worship before you, for your righteous acts have been revealed. So all this song and about 1,000 songs in between all sing the same kind of thing. And what they're singing is this, that God is holy. God is holy. After God abolished any notion that the Egyptian gods were real, anything other than just a construct made up by men, they sing a song of God's holiness. And then, like a 90-year-old John who followed Jesus around, he's on an island and he sees this vision. And he sees people singing to God. And guess what they're singing about? They're singing to a God who is holy. Holy. Now, we hear that word holy, and man, I gotta be honest with you. In our American version of this word, I'm not quite sure we understand it. I think that for so many of us, this has become a really dull word that has really weakened the meaning of it in our American view of this word. We almost use it as a negative. Like whenever you're using the word holy, you typically say something like this. Well, that person's just trying to be holier than thou, right? You've heard that statement. But basically what you're saying is, well, that person is just trying to be better than me. They think they're better than me. Or we say that holy kind of just means weirdly religious, a little over-the-top religious, and we don't have a very good understanding. And the word in American really just, in English, really just means, it comes from the term wholeness. Holiness, wholeness, it means to be perfect, to be complete, to be whole. But the problem with that definition and the problem with our understanding of it is that it really just doesn't do the word justice, because there's so much more to this word, the way that the Hebrew people, the way that God wanted us to understand it. And so I want us to dive a little bit deeper into this word to have a greater understanding of what this means and what it's all about and why it's actually important to us. It's a word that we don't use a lot. Certainly we only use in church, but I don't want it to be one of those words that is weird, that we don't fully understand. I want us to have a really good grasp of what this word is all about. So in order for us to do that, I want us to turn to Isaiah chapter 6 in your Bible if you have one. If not, we'll put it up on the screen. But Isaiah chapter 6, I believe that the encounter that Isaiah is going to have with God is just such a great indicator. And it's going to show us so much about what it means that God is holy. You guys ready for it? Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1. It goes like this. In the year that King Uzziah died. Now let's take a time out right there. King Uzziah died. I'm not exactly sure which year it was. I should have looked that up before this moment. But when he died, see, he had been a king for 52 years in the nation of Israel. 52 years. It's a long time to be king. He was the leader. And as a matter of fact, up until this moment, he had been a really, really good king. He had been a great king that led them in the right ways. And people loved him. And they were so excited that he was their king. But then, kind of look, right here at the end of his life, he did something absolutely bonkers that nobody understood. I just said the word bonkers. He did something, stick to the script. He did something that nobody would understand, nobody quite got. He decided that even though God's word and God's law clearly said the priests are going to be the one that take the offerings, the sacrifices into the temple to worship with them, to burn them, King Uzziah decided that he was going to fire the priests of God and do it himself. I'm going to fire the priests of God, and I'm going to do this myself. And so when the priests of God came in, he says, no, you guys are fired. I'm going to handle this. And in that moment, God gives him leprosy on his forehead. Yeah, so let that be a lesson. And it begins to spread all the way down his body until it eventually kills him over a short period of time. And the nation just begins this downward spiral. Like, our king at 52 years is dead. God struck him dead for being disobedient. What are we going to do now? And so in that year, Isaiah, a prophet, has this vision. And it goes something like this. I saw the Lord, high and exalted, seated on a throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphim. Anybody ever seen a seraphim before? Didn't think so. We'll just call it an angel for now. Each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces. With 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying. See, angels in the Bible are very different than we like to think of angels. We typically think of angels as kind of like a chubby 3-year-old with a toy bow and arrow and big wings. That's not what an angel looked like at all. They were very different. They were scary. They were frightening. And they were calling to one another, holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. Just like the song we just sang. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. Holy, holy, holy. This phrase is so powerful. It's so important. In the Hebrew language, which I'm sure you're all masters of, but let's just do a quick recap. If we were to see something like a big pit in the ground, we would say, hey, that's a really deep pit. That's how we would describe that in English. In the Hebrew language, they used double words often to grant intensity, to show intensity or value. So if they saw a really deep pit, instead of telling you, I saw a really deep pit, they would say it's a pit. And that lets you know that this is something that is big. It's ascribed a huge amount of value. So, for example, to make sure you guys are on board with this, if they were to see a piece of gold that they thought was just this perfect, refined piece of gold, what do you think they would call it? Gold. You guys are all over this. If they were to look at the New York Giants football season right now, what do you think they would call it?
Awful.
Bad. Exactly. Awful. Bad. Yeah, it's not just one, but you can't just put one there. It's got to be big. It's got to be bold. So, when these angels that were flying around, they looked at God, and they were trying to communicate something. They didn't say, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. They said, holy, holy, holy. This is the only place in the Old Testament where you're going to see this triple word. And the word in Hebrew is kadosh. Everybody say kadosh.
Kadosh.
Great conversation starter at the water cooler on Tuesday when you go back to work. Kadosh. It means holy, holy, holy. In other words, kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. We have to ascribe an incredible intensity of value to this word because one holy is not enough. Two holies is not enough. It's going to take three for us to fully grasp and understand what we're talking about when it comes to God's holiness. And the word kadosh, it doesn't mean wholeness, kind of like we think it of. It means set apart. Set apart. And when you say the word set apart, it's like different. It's distinct. It's on a different level. It's not the same as everything else. And so what they were really saying, and multiple people have said in song and in poem throughout history, is that God is set apart, different, and distinct on a whole other level. He is holy. And we need to understand what that means two different ways. Number one, set apart. The fact that God is set apart means, number one, that God is separate from us. That God is separate. He is set apart from us. Isaiah would go on to say in chapter 40, or God speaking through Isaiah would say, who do you compare to me? Who is my equal? I remember when I was a kid, I went to Chickamauga Elementary School. Anybody else go to elementary school there?
No.
Didn't think so. Chickamauga Elementary School. And I remember we had a different kind of playground. I have no earthly idea how we didn't get shut down. Today, this would have never gone. And we would have PE every day, and we would go out, and you know how at most kids' school, when they tell them to run a lap, there's like a track that they run around to get warmed up. They would tell us to do a lap, but the lap included you had to go up the fort and down the slide, and the fort was this wooden thing built in the same year that Holy, Holy, Holy Lord God Almighty was written. 1826, it's verified. And you would get up, if you got 7 or 8 kids on this fort, you would literally, we would play this game. You would run from one side to the other, and you would feel the fort shift. And the teachers would laugh. They'd be like, let's get some more kids up there, see how far we can get it to move. The whole thing would shift. And we would have to go up this fort, down the slide. Then we'd have to run over to the cargo net that was 15 foot high, and they wanted us to climb over the top of it. I'm not comfortable doing that now, much less at 7 years old. Then we would have to run down to the fallen tree, walk up it, 3 laps around the caboose, of course, and then back to where you started from. Now, that was our lap. There was one kid who was so much better than everybody else at this. This kid would finish literally minutes before everybody else. When other people were going up the cargo net, this kid would be done. And if you haven't figured it out yet, I'm definitely not talking about me. But there was one kid that you would have to put him on, you could not put him in the same category of running as everybody else. He was on a different level. He was on a different plane. And if you want to intensify that by about 1 billion, that's what people are saying about God and his holiness. He is set apart. Who is his equal? He has no equal. He is on a completely different level. You see, here's the problem. What we tend to try to do is we try to tend to make ourselves, it's like we want God to be like just a slightly larger, a slightly more intelligent, slightly stronger version of ourselves. But the reality is we can't do that. We just can't do that. When we do that, we lose something so, so valuable, because God is not just one of us. A Slav like one of us, for those of you who were born in the 90s. A few of you got that. The rest of you might hear that song eventually. He's not one of us. He is on a different level. David, who was a king in the Old Testament, he wrote it like this. He said, "Among the gods, there is none like you. Lord, no deeds can compare with yours. You are incomparable. All the nations you have made will come and worship before you, Lord. They will bring glory to your name. For you are great and do marvelous deeds. You alone are God." You alone are God. There was a guy, another prophet named Habakkuk, which is a great name, by the way. If you're looking for a baby name this year, boy or girl, Habakkuk is the way to go. When he saw the presence of God, this is what he said. He said, "I heard and my heart pounded. My lips quivered at the sound. Decay crept into my bones and my legs trembled." When he came in the presence of God, he realized God is on a completely different level. Isaiah later in his book said it like this: "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are you higher, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts." If we could fully understand God and make him just a little bit bigger than us, a little bit better than us, then he would be way too small for us to worship and give the proper respect and worship that he deserves. And a lot of times we have to be really careful with this. We say things like, "I'm just talking to the man upstairs," and I understand what we're saying. We're trying to say he's close like a friend. And we say things like, "Jesus is my homeboy." Does anybody say homeboy anymore?
No.
I didn't think so. I don't say it either, just so we're clear. But I've seen that on church things. And we just have to be sure. We have to make sure. And I understand the whole thought process there is that we want to say that Jesus is close to us. And he is, but we also want to realize that God is on a completely different level than we are. And if we're not careful, we miss what separates us. Which, listen, this is why this is so, so important. The fact that he is on a higher level and he's not like us makes it so much more valuable. It makes it that much more just amazing that he would come down and choose to have a relationship with us, that what should have been distant, he made near. We couldn't do that on our own, but he made near. And so it's so amazing that he is on a different level from us. And holy also means that God is separated from what is impure, which is very different than us. He's separated from what is impure. John, in the New Testament, who followed Jesus, he said it like this. He said, "In him there is no darkness at all." Habakkuk, our guy again, he said that God cannot tolerate evil or wrongdoing, and that he is perfect and without flaw or sin. The angels in this story even had to cover their faces because they were not perfect enough. At the sight of God's perfection, they had to cover themselves. Going on in the story, Isaiah chapter 6, verse 4, continue that story. "At the sound of their voices, the doorposts and thresholds shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. Even the posts and the thresholds of the building were afraid." They were shaking. And Isaiah said, "Woe to me! I am ruined. I am undone." It literally means that he was psychologically falling apart. "For I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King and the Lord Almighty." You know what Job said when he saw God in all of his holiness, and he saw how different they were? Job said, "I hate myself." Literally, I hate myself right now. And when the disciples, they began to see Jesus and his perfection, they were more afraid of the miracles that he was doing than the trouble that they were in the storm one time. It was so amazing. And what being in God's presence and the fact that he has to be separated from what is impure, it shows us how good our goodness really is. And it's described as filthy rags. Filthy rags. We're really good at playing the comparison game. We're really good at it, especially with an age of social media. If you want to feel better about yourself, there are two places you can go. Number one, you can go on social media, and you can find somebody that's doing a little worse than you. Number two, you can go to Walmart, and you can find somebody that's doing a little worse than you. Thank you. First service stared at me for that one. I was like, sorry, I didn't know we had so many Walmart shoppers here.
That was so bad.
You can play play the comparison game, and you can look, and you can see other people not doing as well as you. But when you get in the presence of a God who is holy, who is far from impurity, and you get in his presence, you're going to begin to realize, my goodness is not good. There was a guy named Paul in the New Testament who wrote so much about this subject. Matter of fact, some of you will really like this. He wrote so much about this subject, and he, when he was writing about this, he was saying, you know what? I am a Jew of all Jews. I have kept the Ten Commandments all the way down to the wire. And then he said, but you know what? When I stop and think about my efforts, my best efforts, he actually uses the equivalent of a Roman cuss word in the Bible. You guys want to hear it? He said, all of my effort is skubala. Everybody say skubala.
Skubala.
Not in church. That's like waste, we'll say. Skubala. He said, it's worthless. It's pointless. It's ridiculous because when I compare myself, even at my best, it's like even Isaiah, even at his best, you know what his strength were? His words, his lips. And he says, his first thought is, I'm a man of unclean lips. That's how he lived. That's what he did. He was a prophet. But he said, you know what? In the presence of God, I realize my goodness, not so good. Filthy rags. Because God is on a different level. He is set apart from impurity and sin. And we are not. And then the story continues to finish up in Isaiah 6. The story goes on like this. Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. With it he touched my mouth and said, see, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away and your sin atoned for. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? And I said, here am I. Send me. And he said, go and tell this people, be ever hearing, but never understanding, be ever seeing, but never perceiving. So two things. Number one, a meeting with a God who is holy on a different level, set apart. First of all, it propelled Isaiah outward. He said, give me an assignment, I have to go. And second, it gave him a radical obedience. Could you imagine being told, hey, for the rest of your life, you're going to go, for the next 30 years, you're going to go and preach to people, and they're never going to listen to you. And Isaiah said, let's do it. I'm ready to go. I'm on my way. That's what an encounter with a holy God did. Now, what does that mean for us? I'm glad you asked, because in the New Testament, there's this really troubling verse. I mean, really troubling. Like, we almost wish this wasn't there. But Peter, one of Jesus' disciples, he wrote something. He wrote it like this. He said, remember everything you know about holiness now. He said, I want just as he who called you is holy, so you are to be what?
Holy.
In what?
All
that you do. Time out. Wait a second. Did you just hear what I said? God's on a different level. He's free. You know. How in the world are we supposed to do this? And then he says this, because it is written, be holy because I am holy. So God's expectation of you, now knowing all that you know about his holiness, God's expectation of you is what? Be holy as he is holy. Seems fair, right?
But only one holy.
3 holy. No. Here's the thing I want you to understand. I need you to think through this. I think what Peter is trying to tell us is that God came near to us. It made it possible for us to even think about this. But I think what he's saying is, according to God's word, he has given us a set of commandments, a set of standards. We're supposed to be set apart. We're supposed to be different, distinct from the culture around us. We are supposed to live a different kind of way. I've always said and always felt that if you want to follow Jesus, it will make your life better and it will make you better at life. And I believe what Peter and others are saying in this is, are you set apart in your devotion to following Jesus? Are you set apart in the way that you live your life? Are you propelled outward? Are you experiencing radical obedience because you have been in the presence of a holy God, just like Isaiah was? Let me ask you a couple questions real quick. I just want you to think about it. Are you set apart in the way that you live out generosity and giving in your life? Are you set apart in the way that you live out romantic relationships in your life? Yeah, everybody was really quiet on those first service too. Are you different in the way that you treat people who are different than you? Are you set apart in the way that you lose your temper and get angry? Are you set apart in the way that you treat your spouse and children? Are you set apart in the way that you do your job? You do everything for the glory of God. Are you set apart in the way that you worship? Do you worship things or do you worship God? Are you set apart in the way that you honor your commitments? Are you set apart in the way that you use your words? Are you set apart in the way that you honor your parents? Are you set apart in the way that you treat the elderly? Are you set apart in the way that you live your life? Because listen, if you have a genuine encounter with a holy God, I believe that it does the same things that it did to Isaiah. It sends you, it propels you outward, and it propels you outward with a radical obedience, a radical devotion to God's word. And I want that to be true of you. So if you would stand with me, I want to pray for us. I want to pray that you have that encounter with a God who is set apart, distant, that chose to come here, and now we can leave, propelled outward, set apart, devoted to him. Father, thank you so much. Again, for the opportunity to be here, to be able to worship, to be able to open your word together. And God, I pray that it would take root in our hearts and souls right now. God, that we would not walk out of these doors and forget what we heard. But God, that it would be transforming. And that we would encounter a God who is holy, but yet desired to have a relationship with us. And it would propel us outward. It would propel us outward with a radical obedience and a radical devotion to you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Have a great Sunday. We'll see everybody back next week at 9 or 10:30. Have a great day, guys.